Hello to you and yours, hoping you're having a great time wherever you may be. This is Dennis Rimmer here, the host of Talking Books and Stuff, and we need your help. We're looking for pledges. We're looking for people to be our patrons. We're looking for a little bit of cash here and there, maybe $5 a month or more if you can afford it, but $5 a month would keep us on the air. And we need you, if possible, to go to patreon.com/talkingbooksandstuff1 and pledge your support. I mean, $5 a month, that's what? One cup of coffee, maybe two cups, a fast food hamburger or two, things like that, a couple of newspapers, one magazine. So if you can spare $5 a month, maybe a bit more, please help us out. That's patreon.com/talkingbooksandstuff1. And of course, the one is the number one, the numeral, not the word spelled out. Okay, that's patreon.com/talkingbooksandstuff1. If you can pledge your support to help us keep our podcasts coming. We have lots of great guests lined up, lots more to come. So please stay with us. Thank you. And as Diane says, may all the good news be yours.
Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hello once again, this is Dennis Rimmer. You're tuned in to Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. And today we're talking books and writing and stuff with Elinor Florence. Good day, Elinor. How are things your way today?
Hi, Dennis. It's a beautiful fall day here in Invermere, BC.
Now, exactly where is Invermere again? Refresh our memory.
It's in the southeast corner of BC, so our nearest small city is Cranbrook, and our nearest big city is Calgary.
Okay, so that's like Highway 3 kind of thing?
We're just located on the edge of Kootenay National Park, so about an hour south of the Trans-Canada.
Gotcha. And that brings us to our next topic, which is the writing life. Now, you have more than one book out there. Why don't you just run down a list of your publications book-wise?
Yes. Okay. So my first novel is called Bird's Eye View. It's a World War II historical fiction. It was published in 2014. And during my research, I interviewed so many Second World War Canadian veterans that I ended up creating a website for my interviews and started a monthly blog called Wartime Wednesdays. And after the book was published, a couple of years after my novel was published, I decided to go ahead and select 30 of my best veteran interviews and publish them into a separate book called My Favorite Veterans, because that's really what they are. And that came out in 2016. And then last year, 2018, my second historical novel was published, and I kind of departed from the wartime theme for that one. It's about pioneer life. It's a contemporary novel, but it's got a lot of history there from the Peace River, Alberta area of Canada.
And what's that second one called? The title?
My Favorite Veterans. Oh, and the third one is Wildwood.
Wildwood. Okay. Now, you're in Invermere, BC right now, but do you have a connection to the North Battleford, Saskatchewan area? Do you not?
Oh, my roots run very, very deep into Saskatchewan. My family members all came from Radisson, Maymont, Battleford, Richard, and I grew up on a farm about 10 kilometers straight east of North Battleford. And because my brother took over the family farm, I still go back there every year, and in fact, the old house is still there, and I can still sleep in my own bed in my old bedroom to this day.
Oh, no. No. So 10K east of North Battleford puts you near Denholm? Or?
Near Denholm, that's right.
Well, my family farm is in Denholm.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, maybe you might know my brother Rob, or maybe your family members do then.
What his last name is?
Rob Florence.
Florence. Okay.
Yeah.
No, my family's the Tadies and Voigts, Lampett, all those people.
Oh, Lampett. I went to school with Neil Lampett.
Okay. Well, my cousin Bev married Brian Lampett.
Oh,
because the Lampett's dad ran the elevator.
Yeah?
Yeah, in Denholm, and then my the store, Charlie Boland's store, that was my aunt.
Oh, for goodness sake. And well, Pat Boland was my best friend in high school.
Oh, no, yes. Yeah, Pat Boland, yes. Well, they're all related, because that's on my cousin's side, on my aunt...
Okay.
On my aunt's side, who married. Anyway, enough of that.
Well, yes, I'm sure we're boring your listeners with our family history.
So, how did you get from the farm life near Denholm to the writing life? Did you read a lot when you were young and write a lot?
Oh, yes. I went to a one-room country school. We didn't have television. I read a lot. And I went to Saskatoon for my English degree. Then I came home and started working for my hometown newspaper as a reporter in North Battleford, and decided I wanted to be a journalist. So I went back to university. I went to Carleton University in Ottawa for my journalism degree, came back to Saskatchewan again, and started at the Western Producer as a farm reporter. So that's where my deep love of agriculture comes from, because I traveled all over Western Canada reporting for the Producer, the Western Seducer, as the guys used to call me. And I ended up then moving from there over to Red Deer and worked for the Advocate newspaper. That was a daily newspaper. Started there as a farm reporter and kind of worked my way up, and ended up going to the Winnipeg Sun from there, and finally to the Province Daily newspaper in Vancouver.
Ah. So.
Yeah, I've been all over. And ended up in Invermere because about 20 years ago, my husband and I decided we wanted to raise our kids in a small town. And we looked all over the place and decided this was a good spot, and we've been here ever since, and we've never regretted it.
And you thought Denholm was too big for you, is that?
Well, it's probably not that much smaller than Invermere. Invermere has 3,000 people, so it's a pretty tiny village.
Well, I think Denholm might have 50 left, something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So when you were young, you read a lot. Most writers do. Did you have favorite authors or favorite genres that you drifted toward back in your, let's say, elementary and high school days?
Well, like every other girl on the planet, I think Anne of Green Gables was my favorite series, and I devoured all of the Lucy Maud Montgomery books from the North Battleford Public Library over and over again. Anybody else
come to mind other than good old Lucy Maud?
Well, I always liked Neville Shute.
On the beach.
He wrote a lot of wartime fiction, which I think is just fantastic. So he would be one of my idols, I guess.
I remember reading On the Beach when I was a youngster, and then there was a movie version too, but that was kind of...
That was one of his grimmer books.
Yeah, it was kind of bleak. Yeah.
A Town Like Alice was a wonderful book, which I love, and it was made into a BBC miniseries back in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
And that was based in World War II.
Oh, was it in Australia?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So you went from the farm life to the big city lights as a action-packed news reporter, writing lots of stories. I'm sure you probably churned out, 2 or 3 a day or something in the daily newspaper grind?
Yeah, especially in the weekly. Yeah, well, I kind of came full circle, actually, because when we moved to Invermere, I thought, well, that's the end of my writing career. But shortly after we arrived here, I met a guy who had driven his propane truck off a cliff and survived. And so I wrote up that story and sent it to Reader's Digest in Montreal. And that was back in the day when you mailed it with an envelope and a stamp.
Right.
And they published it and asked me if I wanted to become a regular writer. So for 8 years then, I wrote assignments for the Digest, and it worked out perfectly because the internet was just coming on strong then, so I could do most of my research and telephone interviewing from here in Invermere.
Right. So.
And then in 2004, this is a long story.
That's okay.
An opportunity arose to buy a couple had started a fledgling newspaper here in Invermere, and it had only been going for a few weeks when they offered it to me to buy it and operate it. So I did. And so for the next 6 years, I published the weekly newspaper here in Invermere, and because of the depth of my experience, as well as this lovely community, I was able to turn it into quite a successful paper, and it's still going.
And that's good because gosh knows that the world needs more newspapers. So
yes, they're falling away at an alarming rate now.
Right. So what's your take on that whole situation? Because from my viewpoint, I've read a newspaper since maybe I was in grade 1, and every day almost. And I read it because I liked everything that was in a newspaper, the features, the sports, the comics, the editorials, the comments, reporting. And now it seems, and newspapers say, well, it's because we don't have classified advertising, but they're giving me less and charging me more. And I don't understand how that is a successful business model. So I don't know what to do. I love newspapers. I don't want them to see them go away, but they seem to be shooting themselves in their own feet.
Well, it's the fact is that they're losing advertising dollars, and so the money that is raised through subscriptions was always a smaller component than the advertising, and the advertisers are turning to the internet to deliver their message now. So there just isn't the revenue available to newspapers. There's still a very, very strong support for community newspapers.
Yes.
And I hope that will continue.
I know, I've noticed that they seem to be on the upswing when the dailies seem to be dropping down. So at least there's that, because where else are you going to get that local stuff? You don't get it on the internet. So you got to get it.
My winning formula for my little newspaper here in Invermere was to talk about friends and neighbors, because that's basically what people want to read about in a community paper.
Exactly. So what's the name of the paper, by the way?
The Columbia Valley Pioneer.
Columbia Valley Pioneer. We're talking with Elinor Florence here on Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. I'm Dennis Rimmer. Elinor Florence is with us from Invermere, BC. We sort of got sidetracked there talking about farm life and newspaper life. So let's go back to your writing life. What inspired you to come out with your first book, which was Bird's Eye View? Tell us about that one.
Yes, it's about a farm girl from Saskatchewan who is working for her hometown newspaper. Is this ringing any bells?
Oh, okay.
When World War II breaks out. Now, obviously, she's a little before my time. But she is inspired with patriotism when her town, Touchwood, which is loosely based on the Battlefords, becomes an air training base in World War II. North Battleford was a huge air training base. And my personal connection with that is that because it was such a big base, they set up 2 relief airports, one north of town and one east of town. And after the war, the Department of National Defense sold off those extra airports, and my father bought the one near Denholm, and that became my family farm. So there were some old buildings on the property, including a small barracks building, and my parents turned that into our family home. So I actually grew up in a World War II barracks building in Saskatchewan.
Well.
So anyway, my heroine then is fired with patriotism. She joins the Air Force, goes overseas, and becomes an interpreter of aerial photographs. And that's the people who studied the black and white reconnaissance photographs being brought back from the planes flying over the continent, over German-occupied territory.
Yep.
And they searched these photographs with their magnifying glasses, looking for camouflaged airports, troop movements, bomb targets, essentially. And because my heroine, Rose, is so gifted because she's from Saskatchewan and she's Canadian, and of course she makes several important discoveries that all the guys have missed, and practically wins the war single-handedly.
Hooray! It should be a mini-series. Have you had any overtures that way?
Well, people keep telling me all the time that it should be a movie, but unfortunately wartime themes are very expensive to produce, because you've got to have aircraft and uniforms and, a whole period setting.
Oh, right. Yeah.
My new novel would lend itself more to a movie, I think.
And that is Wildwood?
Yes.
Oh, and what's the story of the story in Wildwood?
Well, again, I drew heavily on my farm background. So it's about a young single mother in Phoenix, Arizona. And I had her come from Phoenix because I wanted her to come from a really hot place. And she gets a call from a lawyer one day telling her that she has inherited an abandoned farm way up in the bush in northern Alberta in the Peace River area. And it is hers on condition that she lives there for 1 year off the grid. Oh. There's an old farmhouse on the property. And so she takes her 4-year-old daughter and moves up there, never having even seen snow before. And the book is about her challenges and whether she can survive the life of our pioneer ancestors. So in the old house, she finds the diary belonging to the original homesteader, her great aunt. And so I've excerpted the diary throughout the book. And that's where I tried to make it as authentic as possible. I read a lot of pioneer memoirs, especially from that part of Canada, about what it was like for the real homesteaders up there.
And this is set in the Peace River district?
Yes,
Wildwood?
Yes, and I chose that area because it is Canada's northernmost farming community. In fact, I think it might even be the world's northernmost farming community. The guys men and women who went up there to homestead really had it tough because it's so much colder, and they had to clear the land. It wasn't like, dropping a plow into the sod like they could do in the southern prairies, but they were the last homesteaders to arrive, and so the good land was all taken up, and they were told, if you want your 160 free acres, you have to go north.
And keep on going.
Yes,
wow.
Pretty much.
So what kind of...
So I won't tell you whether my heroine survived the 365 days up there, but you'll have to read the book to find out.
Well, good. And the book is Wildwood by Elinor Florence, our guest today here on Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. So that sounds, Wildwood, the premise sounds like the things you see on Facebook where it says, would you live in this cabin for $1 million for, 2 months without the internet? So it's...
Exactly.
Did that kind of...
with people, there's so much talk these days about living off the grid that I just conceived the idea of someone who was forced to do that. And I just wondered if a young modern woman who's born and raised in the city would be able to survive the lifestyle of our ancestors.
Well, let's hope she does, but we won't give anything away. What's the in being a professional writer, what was the hardest lesson you had to learn?
Well, for me, the biggest challenge was moving from nonfiction to fiction, because all my life, of course, I'd had it drilled into me, don't make anything up. You don't know what people are thinking. You only know what people are saying. So to go from that to writing a book of fiction was very difficult. I get to a point where two characters would have to have a conversation, and I'd be searching the desk for my notes before I realized I didn't have any notes, and I'd have to actually make it up.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. So, however, I think that my background as a journalist really shines through the book because of the research. I was good at researching, and I'm calling both of my books really fact-based fiction because there is so much genuine Canadian prairie history in both of them.
Elinor Florence is with us today. Elinor has Wildwood, fiction book, just came out. My Favorite Veteran and that's nonfiction. And Bird's Eye View. So Bird's Eye View, you interviewed lots of veterans, and then that led you to the My Favorite Veteran and Wartime Wednesdays. Is that correct?
Correct. And all those stories, if anybody wants to read them, are available on my website, which is just myname.com. Elinor is spelled a funny way, though I should spell it for your listeners. It's Elinor, Florence, like Florence Nightingale, .com.
.com. ElinorFlorence.com. And Wartime Wednesdays, is that a regular, like a feature?
I wrote Wartime Wednesdays for 5 years, so there's a ton of material on my website. But starting in January of this year, I decided to change my focus a little bit. So now my new monthly newsletter is called Letters from Windermere, because I live on the shores of Lake Windermere.
Right.
And it's more of a personal newsletter, more about me and my travels, my writing, the inspiration for my novels, things like that.
And it's ElinorFlorence.com. The novels, Bird's Eye View, and I lost my notes here, Wildwood, and then My Favorite Veteran. So they're all still obviously available out there in the land of bookstores and things like that.
Bird's Eye View is everywhere, and it's also available as an audiobook and an ebook. You can get it at Chapters, from Amazon, from your local bookstore, your independent bookstore. The same with Wildwood. Now, My Favorite Veterans, because I published that myself, it's only available from me. But you can easily find my contact information on my website if you'd like to order a copy.
There you go, and it's Elinor Florence, our guest today. The website is ElinorFlorence.com, and Elinor is Elinor, and Florence, Florence, as Elinor said, like Florence Nightingale. And so that brings us to your next project. Do you have any other books coming out or that you're working on?
Well, I have to say that I'm pondering a sequel to Wildwood because I've had so many people email and say, "So what happened to those characters next?" So I'm really thinking about that. But I do have one big thing that's coming up, Dennis, that I would like to mention because I'm really excited about it. When my heroine Rose from Bird's Eye View goes overseas to England and becomes an aerial photo interpreter, she serves at the headquarters there, which is a real place in England. And during the war, it was called RAF Medmenham. And there were 600 photo interpreters stationed there. After the war, it became a luxury hotel. And I've just been invited by the hotel to go over there next May and do a book signing there. And I'm just thrilled about it because of the wartime history behind the hotel, and also the fact that it's a very posh hotel. George Clooney had his wedding reception there, so I think you can guess how fancy it is. So I'll be staying in the hotel for 3 nights, and I will be doing a book signing there on May 7th. And the name of the hotel is Danesfield House, and it's about an hour west of London. So if anybody is over in England on May 7th and would like to drop by and see me, that would be fantastic.
Danesfield House, is it called?
Yes.
Yeah. And if we don't remember the name, we just look up George Clooney's wedding and go from there.
Or my website.
Yeah, or the website, which is elinorflorence.com. And this is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. I'm Dennis Rimmer. Elinor Florence has been with us today. Books include Bird's Eye View, Wildwood, My Favorite Veteran, and she has, like we just said, the website as well. You can catch up with her there. So, Elinor, we'll let you get back to, don't go away, we'll let you get back to your routine up there in Invermere, BC. And thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Dennis.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.